You are all under arrest.
Save me, RoboCop!
RoboCop has gained a reputation as one of the most widely viewed franchises of all time, and it is no surprise that there are several versions of this cyberpunk superhero series. Inspired by the original 1987 RoboCop, the Marvel Action Universe decided to produce an animated series that would attract younger audiences. Soon enough, the RoboCop animated series was released the following year, and today we shall return in time and explore it with you. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin. Embarking on an animated adventure, the RoboCop 1988 series. Created by Edward Neumeier and Michael Miner, this series was inspired by the RoboCop movie, and it followed the adventures of cyborg cop Alex Murphy. While the original film had a lot of action and adventure, this series adopted a sci-fi tone and replaced most weapons with high-tech devices, making it quite a popular show among kids. It was also set in an alternate continuity which mirrored most of the elements of the original film, but also made a few changes, such as introducing a red light in the middle of RoboCop's visor or undoing Clarence Boddicker's death in the show's premise. It was animated by ACOM Productions, and it went on for about 12 episodes until it sadly came to a quick end. Later on, the show's rights were passed on to Disney in 2001, and it is currently under the ownership of Amazon's Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer ever since they acquired the rights to the entire RoboCop franchise. Now that we know how this show came into being, let us dive into its plot and explore a few episodes of this iconic sci-fi show that has dominated most of our childhoods. Exploring the cybernetic depths of New Light City, an insightful guide to the RoboCop 1988 animated TV series. First aired on October 1st, 1988, the show kicked off with an episode titled Crime Wave and showcased Alex Murphy in all his glory. To set some premise, Alex was a cyborg cop in the police force of old Detroit, and he often found himself in tough spots due to interventions by Dr. McNamara. While he tried to face challenges and emerge victorious, RoboCop found an ally and a confidant in the form of Officer Ann Lewis, who seemed to harbor feelings for him, and also found a bully in the form of the prejudiced Lieutenant Roger Hedgecock. In fact, the first episode kicks off with Lieutenant Hedgecock leading a SWAT team to deal with a burglary at the OCP blood bank. While these thieves hoped to get their hands on some plasma to sell it on the black market, they planted a bomb within the building, and RoboCop soon arrived at the scene with Officer Ann Lewis. They managed to defuse the situation and get rid of the bomb, leaving a sour taste in Hedgecock's mouth as he hoped to be the one to arrest the criminals. While RoboCop showed off his capabilities right from the first minute of the episode, he seemed to have way too many opponents. One such person was Dr. McNamara, who had been trying to push his cyborg project, the ED-260, in front of the OCP board. McNamara insisted that RoboCop was too expensive and that the ED-260 was a suitable replacement, but the cyborg malfunctioned during the demonstration and caused a lot of traffic troubles. Eventually, RoboCop saved the day and restored normalcy, much to Dr. McNamara's dismay. He soon started plotting revenge and hired a gang, the Vandals, to wreak havoc in the city and tarnish RoboCop's reputation. In the meantime, Dr. Tyler decided to tweak RoboCop's programming, even if it meant that he would be void of his humanity after the process. While RoboCop's entire being was at risk, Sergeant Reed intervened and ordered them to stop the process and send RoboCop to make amends in the city. While our cyborg cop made his way to the Metro South shopping center along with Ann, he faced the Vandals, who showed up in large numbers and overpowered him. Now that he was incapacitated, McNamara jumped in at the right moment to urge the OCP board to reconsider their decision to use RoboCop. In fact, he even advocated for him to be deactivated entirely, but little did he know that RoboCop was already getting repairs and returning to its peak functionality. As the episode ended, the Vandals made their way to the Federal Reserve Gold Depository and used a bulldozer to break the gates and barge in. However, they were soon thwarted by RoboCop, who refused to let the gang get the best of him a second time. The vandals had also taken Anne hostage, and RoboCop defeated them all and rescued her, ensuring a happy ending. While McNamara tried his best to talk the old man at the OCP board to deactivate RoboCop, the cyborg lived to see another day and embark on many more adventures alongside Anne Lewis. The next episode, The Scrambler, started with RoboCop and Anne on a date that was sadly interrupted when a criminal tried to steal a car nearby. While the two seemed to be having a good time, RoboCop immediately jumped into action to arrest the car thieves and take them to Sergeant Reed at the precinct. This ended up draining his battery, and Anne felt a bit annoyed that he would have to recharge himself instead of spending more time with her. In the meantime, the scene shifted to the Metro South prison, where a criminal known as the Scrambler keenly watched the old man from OCP on the cafeteria television. The old man seemed to be giving an interview about OCP's success, and this enraged the Scrambler, who threw his food at the television and declared that the old man was a liar and that he would destroy his organization one day. Soon enough, the Scrambler broke into the OCP's main computer system and got his hands on the RoboCop's project files. While Roosevelt monitored RoboCop as he recharged, the Scrambler tweaked his programming and somehow got him to walk in his sleep and make his way to the Metro South prison. He then programmed RoboCop to turn the prison's power system off and use this opportunity to escape captivity. While RoboCop returned to the precinct safely, he had no recollection of his actions upon waking up, and Roosevelt informed him that he wandered away in the middle of the night. At the same time, Reed received news of the jailbreak and sent RoboCop and Anne to Metro South prison to investigate. While RoboCop was unaware that the Scrambler was controlling his mind, it reflected in his actions as he left Anne behind at the prison and headed to a bank. He then robbed the bank and took the money to the Scrambler's hideout, while Dr. Tyler and Roosevelt got wind of this and wondered why RoboCop had gone rogue. On the other hand, the Scrambler ordered RoboCop to destroy the OCP facilities, and the rogue cop managed to wreak havoc before Lieutenant Hedgecock arrived at the scene and ended his terror. While Hedgecock stopped him from destroying the OCP auto assembly, RoboCop managed to escape before he could be contained. Now that he had stirred up enough trouble, the Scrambler contacted the old man and told him that he had gotten RoboCop under his control. This was a huge mistake on his part, and his successful planning went to waste the second the old man got wind of his plan. He immediately ordered Dr. Tyler to deactivate RoboCop, and the Scrambler had to override this command to continue using RoboCop as his toy. Soon enough, RoboCop made his way to the OCP building to kill the old man on the Scrambler's commands, but Lieutenant Hedgecock and Anne Lewis also showed up to prevent any disasters. As things boiled down to a tense finale, RoboCop was all set to kill the old man when Anne urged him to reconsider his decision and snap out of his current state. While the Scrambler doubled down on RoboCop and ordered him to kill Anne, the cyborg's feelings for her got in the way and he could not bring himself to kill her. Instead, his entire body started malfunctioning and electrical sparks erupted from his body as he collapsed to the floor. He soon bounced back and rushed to the Scrambler's hideout to place him under arrest before he could do any more harm. Now that the culprit is behind bars again, RoboCop returned to regular functioning. Dr. Tyler even changed his system password to ensure the scenario was not repeated. In this way, each episode covered a new hindrance in RoboCop's path as he did his best to fight crime in old Detroit while also dealing with Dr. McNamara's evil plans to bring him down. As the show progressed, the plotline continued thickening and things became quite interesting towards the finale episodes, Into the Wilderness and Menace of the Mind. Dr. Tyler traveled to Los Angeles with RoboCop and the rest of the police force in the hopes of demonstrating the cyborg cop to the LAPD. While Hitchcock told Tyler not to get her hopes up, he ended up insulting RoboCop's half-human, half-robot persona, and Anne quickly jumped to his defense and shut him down. As their flight progressed, a sudden crash sent them into a state of frenzy, and Hitchcock tried his best to get the aircraft under his control. However, the plane malfunctioned and they had no option but to use the emergency exit and crash land in the middle of nowhere. While Dr. Tyler and the others landed safely, with the help of parachutes, RoboCop crashed to the ground and found himself in a strange cabin when he regained consciousness. He soon faced a young woman named Claire who fixed him and helped him get back on his feet. Claire also seemed to know all about RoboCop and the OCP, but she had no way of contacting them, and she only offered to run some more tests to ensure that his body was functioning smoothly. Claire was an environmental biologist who strived to save endangered species, and RoboCop had a gala time exploring the wilderness with her while the rest of the team frantically looked for him. They even found the plane crash site, and Anne discovered some tire tracks that led into the wilderness. While they decided to wait until next morning to follow these tracks and locate RoboCop, the cyborg traveled to the eastern sector with Claire to help her deal with an environmental crisis. As it turned out, all the fish in this area died due to pollutants in the water, and the two of them soon discovered that the contamination could be traced back to the OCP's newest design, the Ravager. They had created this robot to uproot the trees and get rid of the ecosystem to set up a base for their latest operation, and RoboCop approached the plant executive and threatened him to shut it down. However, one of the plant workers, Ralph, soon contacted the board, and OCP then sent a horde of robotic dogs to deal with RoboCop and stop him from interfering in their affairs. While the dogs did considerable damage to RoboCop's physique, Claire suggested that they could derive some power from a nearby dam to repair his body. While Anne and the others traced the tire tracks to Claire's cabin, RoboCop's powers continued to deplete, and they rushed to the dam while Ralph sent the Ravager after them. Claire and RoboCop did their best to dodge the Ravager's attacks, and RoboCop finally aimed a boulder at this enemy bot and crushed it. While they believed they have finally gotten rid of it, the Ravager soon bounced back and somehow managed to capture RoboCop despite Claire's protests. A dejected Claire returned to her cabin to find Anne, Hitchcock, and Dr. Tyler, who seemed quite bewildered when they learned everything that had gone down in the past few hours. They rushed to the logging side and faced Ralph, but Anne pushed him out of the way and located RoboCop. While the cyborg seemed unresponsive, they put him in their car and left the logging site with the Ravager following them soon after. Somehow, Dr. Tyler managed to bring RoboCop back to life in the nick of time, and this time around, the cyborg managed to defeat the Ravager. As the episode ended, an enraged Ralph mourned the loss of the Ravager, while the old man also paid him a visit and almost fired him for trying to kill RoboCop. The old man then addressed RoboCop and warned him against interfering in OCP affairs again, but of course, this did not sit right with RoboCop's moral code, as he declared that he would interfere in their workings if they tried to break the law again. In the final episode titled Menace of the Mind, a menace known as the Zip Chip Caller created a whole lot of trouble in the city and managed to kill a bunch of people. This caller was supposedly capable of speeding up the brain's synapses, and it was produced illegally and distributed among students or office workers who hoped to get a competitive edge over their peers. Sadly, it came with a whole lot of risks, and it had even recently killed a young kid named Jimmy. While the office force tried to track down the distributors, it was impossible to find them, and the only link they had was the OCP-produced microchips that were being stolen and used to create these collars. In fact, the old man was himself quite worked up over the Zip Chip Collar, as news outlets followed him everywhere he went and tarnished OCP's reputation. While the police force kept a keen eye on OCP's microchip supplies, a superpowered aircraft broke into the OCP grounds and tried to steal the microchips from the OCP quarters. RoboCop was the only one capable of chasing after them, and he even climbed up the buildings to get close to the lowered aircraft. However, the burglars managed to shake him off, and he ended up falling from a great height and directly into the water. While this left him incapacitated for days, Dr. Tyler did her best to fix him, but this turned out to be a tedious process that might not even fully salvage him. In the meantime, the old man curated a team of highly accomplished officers as part of the newly formed Ultra Police that could assist the Detroit police in RoboCop's absence. On the other hand, Dr. Tyler struggled to snap RoboCop out of his coma, where he seemed to be having nightmarish visions of his opponents torturing him. While Tyler seemed to be at a loss for how to snap RoboCop back to reality, Anne intervened and hugged him hard until he seemingly recovered and jumped back into action. Dr. Tyler then presented the Robocopter to him, hoping that this newly invented technology would help the cyborg cop fight against the criminal's superpowered aircraft. As RoboCop and Anne test the Robocopter, she confronted him about his nightmares, and he finally revealed that he was quite worked up about the case because of the criminal in question. As it turned out, the person responsible for the Zip Chip Collar fiasco was Clarence Boddicker, the same person who had fatally shot RoboCop when he was only a human. It was this attack that had left him incapacitated and in need of the cybernetic implants that shaped him into RoboCop, and somehow, Clarence had once again returned to haunt RoboCop's life. While RoboCop vowed to find Boddicker and punish him for his crimes, the Ultra Police Force shared their mutual agenda of outperforming RoboCop. They soon faced Boddicker, but sadly, they failed to defeat him and almost found themselves at his mercy. While Boddicker threatened to kill one of these Ultra Police officers, RoboCop spotted them from a distance from the Robocopter and de-escalated the situation before chasing after Boddicker's aircraft. In a striking finale, RoboCop and Boddicker almost fought one another while Anne realized that that one of the Ultra police officers was on the verge of death. She talked RoboCop out of fighting Boddicker, and they instead saved all the police officers who seemed to have changed their minds about RoboCop. Back at their base, these officers thanked RoboCop for saving their lives, and he asked them for their help in finding Boddicker. Finally, RoboCop traced Boddicker to the Trumpet Center in Delta City, and they headed to the criminal's base with an arsenal of weapons. As Boddicker and RoboCop got into their respective aircraft for a final face-off, they chased after one another all over Detroit City until RoboCop finally got his much-awaited revenge. In a fitting finale, the show ended with Boddicker's aircraft crashing to the ground and RoboCop then making his way to him and hovering over him with a gun. While Boddicker was evil enough to shoot Alex Murphy, Anne rushed to RoboCop's side and advised him against killing him. She reminded him that he was not a murderer, and the show ended with RoboCop making the right decision and arresting his killer instead. Main characters of the RoboCop animated series. RoboCop, voiced by Robert Boxstall, RoboCop, or Alex Murphy, was essentially a cyborg cop who worked as a part of old Detroit City's police force. He was designed by the OCP board under the keen eye of the old man and was maintained by Dr. Tyler and Dr. Roosevelt. RoboCop used to be an officer named Alex Murphy who had been injured on call and then reprogrammed with bulletproof titanium robotic parts that allowed him to keep functioning as a cyborg. While this character was inspired by the 1987 RoboCop movie, this animated series variant took a scientific approach while also retaining his humanity. He went on several adventures alongside Dr. Anne and often relied on Dr. Tyler to repair his body in case he sustained injuries or damaged any cybernetic components. Anne Lewis. Anne Lewis was one of the members of the police force in Old Detroit, and her character was voiced by Susan Roman. She was depicted as RoboCop's sidekick or partner, and they had de-escalated many crises together. While Anne seemed to harbor feelings for RoboCop, he did not seem to understand the depth of her affection, but at the same time, he sometimes reciprocated those feelings. Anne was one of the few characters who could bring RoboCop under control, and she had saved his life on numerous occasions, especially when he was being mind-controlled by other beings. Dr. McNamara. Besides voicing the titular character, Robert Boxstall also voiced Dr. McNamara, who was portrayed as one of RoboCop's biggest nemesis. While the OCP board had pitched RoboCop to the police force, Dr. McNamara had come up with the ED-260, an upgraded version of the Enforcement Droid Series 209. McNamara also hoped to secure more funding for this project, but he was quite annoyed at the fact that his funding was given to RoboCop instead of his marvelous creation. Throughout the course of the series, Dr. McNamara stirred up trouble for RoboCop and tried to depict him as an unreliable cop so that the OCP board would deactivate him and pick the ED-260 as a replacement. Sadly for him, RoboCop was more than capable of overcoming any hurdle in his path, and most of McNamara's plans flopped in the face of RoboCop's enhanced efficiency. Embracing the future, the riveting universe, and timeless influence of the RoboCop animated TV series. This 1988 animated series is described as one of the most faithful depictions of the RoboCop universe, and it certainly succeeded in its attempt to attract a younger audience. It was quite refreshing to see RoboCop refraining from using bullets or other violent weapons and opting for scientific tools such as lasers to best his opponents. The audiences truly enjoyed the sci-fi spin on this otherwise violent character, and this series further highlighted RoboCop's attempts to stay in touch with his humanity despite being a cyborg. The show also did not try to depict RoboCop as an invulnerable entity, but rather showed him as a human with enhanced abilities whose life is no different than that of any other being. Along with a solid plotline, the show had a wonderful voice cast that breathed life into these characters and a solid soundtrack that made the show an entertaining watch. ACOM Productions also deserves recognition for doing a spectacular job with the background and character animation. And this 1988 series undeniably brought a lot to the table and became an integral part of the phenomenal RoboCop universe.
The situation is now under control.
Marvelous verdict. To wrap things up, this RoboCop animated series certainly made for an interesting watch, and it's a shame that it only lasted for 12 episodes. It was quite refreshing to see RoboCop operate in a sci-fi setting instead of pulling out guns and other such weapons to deal with crime in the city of Old Detroit, and this show certainly deserves a lot more praise than it gets. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.